This is the Healy Brothers Show.
Right, so we've done these before. Jason's not here today, obviously he's enjoying himself a little bit. But so it's I have Dylan and Brian with me. Brian's used car director. What is your actual position title? Because you bounce around.
I got a hard time explaining it, yeah, but it's like a...
Jack of all trades.
That's usually how Jay introduces me, but it's I kind of hover between our Chevrolet store and our Hyundai store. I'll fill in, sales managers' positions when people go on vacation. Try to be a right-hand man for the general managers at those two stores, but that's kind of what it is. Praise vehicles.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I just wanted to introduce you properly. I don't think I've ever given you a title in it.
I don't think a lot of people know. They kind of just know that I'm around Hyundai and the Chevrolet stores for the most part. Yeah. Right.
But so this is something we've done before. We want to try and do it on a monthly basis, and it's just an update on the used car market. So honestly, we've learned that dealers themselves appreciate this content, which is a little different than most viewers that we normally have. Obviously it's normally consumers. Granted, I'm sure consumers listen to it, but unlike the TikTok side, it was cool to see other dealers participate in the content. But so really the first thing we'll jump into is, this is the month of October, right, around the middle of the month of October. So what are the current pricing trends when it comes to the used car market? Where are the prices heading in terms of retail, and where they're heading in trade-in value, and how are retail prices affecting trade-in values?
So the used car values have been pretty steady. There's two factors, one pulling it down and one actually pulling it up. So there are less used vehicles in the market. There's less lease turn-ins that normally flood the market. A lot of people bought their leases out when during COVID, and also while interest rates are high, and they just realize, hey, this lease was $400 a month and now it's $700 a month. You know what? I'll just refi my current vehicle. So there's less used inventory out there. So that's driving prices up. But the new car market always drives the used car market. So there are huge incentives on new cars because we have an abundance of inventory on the new side. So therefore the manufacturers are making a lot of heavier discounts through rebates on the new side. And if you have a $10,000 rebate on a 2025 new, that's going to make the value of a 2022, 2023, 2024 used, same model, drop. So it's kind of being pulled in two different directions, but evening out.
It's evening out. Okay, that makes sense. How have the incentives affected compared to the last couple of months we've done it? Have the incentives gotten more aggressive?
I read a statistic where year over year incentives have climbed 53.5% that I just read this morning. So they're up significantly.
Yeah.
So that's definitely affecting it.
Yep. Especially on 2024 model years, where automakers are doing their absolute best to help the dealers move those 2024 model year vehicles to make room for the 25. Right.
The bigger discount. Now, one segment that actually shows a huge decline is the used EV market. Now, because of federal rebates that you can get through the IRS, individual states, here in New York, there's a New York State rebate that you're eligible for, plus the manufacturer.
Used or just new?
I'm talking, so for the new rebate. So there is for the pre-owned, but IRS gives a rebate if you qualify for a new EV. New York State gives for a new EV. The manufacturer is giving huge rebates, and dealers are willing to sell most of these at cost or below. So that's affecting the used car market huge. They tend to be a little bit slower in turn, and therefore you can get a lot of bang for your buck if you're looking for an EV and you're willing to look for a used or certified pre-owned, just because the values they're hovering below what the average trend for the used car market as a whole.
I know that used car rebate, I'll be honest, I utilized it, and I utilized the price of EVs going down, right? The EV I wanted, the price of it dropped drastically with that certain companies, their own price cuts on their new vehicles. Theirs weren't incentives. They were just being competitive with pricing of other companies like Hyundai and Chevy coming out with more EVs that were cutting into their sales.
There's also been an interesting trend that I've seen, not just on social media, but I've read in articles where I believe the average negative equity in a vehicle for consumers right now is somewhere around $5,500 or $6,500, $6,000. So there's this big trend where, people that bought in 2021, 2022, even 2023, especially used vehicles when, asset values were appreciated, Right, and then they they fell as new vehicles became more available. I've actually seen that there's been a big trend in the movement of electric vehicles because of these rebates, where it's allowing people to take that negative equity, roll it into a lease of an electric vehicle that has huge rebates in it, and kind of find a way in 3 years to just bury that negative equity. And then, you know, if they want to buy out that EV at the end of the lease, or if they just walk away from it, it gets them, you know, at least out of their negative equity situation without having to put a bunch of money down.
That's a really good way to utilize the rebates, honestly.
And it sounds like a really bad number, $5,500, $6,500 negative equity, but it is in comparison from the 2020, 2021, 2022. But yeah, if you look at a graph of, you know, a cyclical graph every decade or every couple of years, that's probably, I'd guess, average.
I would say
if
so.
you took COVID, you know, a 3-year period out of the equation and you just looked at the rest of the history, that's probably pretty spot on of what it's been. I wouldn't say that, you know, and then take into account inflation. So
it was pretty funny hearing, you know, I sit in like the finance office at Chevy. So Tom Means like right there, and he was trying to explain to a customer over the phone that like the equity in leases just like isn't there anymore like how it was a few years ago. Because I'm assuming it must have been a customer that gave up a lease during COVID, right? They had massive equity and they leased another car.
$4 or $5 grand in equity enrolled in.
Now they're probably turning in their lease that they got during COVID, and they're like, hey, why don't I have a couple grand in equity like I did back in 2021?
I mean, you went from, again, if you look at history, 1 in every 1,000 cars, or not cars, but 1 in every 1,000 customers probably had equity in their lease. And it's not because they drove it the 12,000 miles per year like they signed up for it. They probably ended up only driving 12,000 in the total of 3 years. So they had equity. But, you know, it was,
Right, that's a great point, too, because people were driving
probably
less.
a 0.1% of people have equity in their lease. Then comes COVID, and 9 out of 10 people have equity in their lease. Didn't matter if they were 10,000 miles over the allotted amount, they had equity.
Right.
Now it's back to normal where it's just, things have, yeah.
It was just funny to hear Tom Mead, like, you know, you still have that explanation having to happen because, I mean, 2024 makes sense, you know, if you lease a car in 2021, you're 3 years out from when you leased your last car. So it kind of makes sense the time period, but it was just so funny to hear that phone call the other day. I was like, wow.
Well, it's reality. Yeah, it's kind of, a lot of our job right now is hitting people with the reality of the car market. You know,
It's changed.
Yeah, it has. Certainly has.
With the reality of the car market, so with the KBB side, how are customers' reaction to hearing their trade-in values compared to like the last couple of months and compared to last year? Because obviously the trade-in is worth less than what it was 2023, the further we're getting away from COVID time. So how have they been reacting to their trade-in values?
Everyone's different, but you know, I think that there's different types of buyers. So someone, you know, there's people that do a KBB on their car every 6 months. They want to see where it's been. They see the trend going back down. But there might be someone that did it 2.5 years ago, saw a number that now is $10,000 different. And I guess the upside of it is what we just talked about, the fact that the vehicles that they're looking to purchase, whether it be used or new, is not going to be as high as it was 2 to 3 years ago. Prices were much higher. There weren't discounts, there weren't rebates, there weren't anything. It was, this is the price of the vehicle from the manufacturer, this is what it's going to sell for, sometimes for even more than that.
Right. No subvented APR, stuff like that.
It weighs, you know, it's going to even itself out. Your trade is going to be worth less than it was 2 years ago just based on market factors, but the vehicle that you're looking at buying is also being sold for less, except for maybe a handful of specialty exotic GT3 RS type vehicles that are still 80,000 over MSRP being 3 years old. So, but the vast majority of vehicles out there, you know, they're being sold for less. So it does even out. Same as if you're in the market for a house.
But the explanation for the customers probably matters, how the reaction is to their trading values. So moving on to the next segment is kind of like a sales comparisons currently, right? You can base it off of this month, last couple months is just like the performance of used cars compared to new cars. Like how is it because of this market, right? I know one thing we touched on before we started this was like sedan sales, right? Like new sedan sales are down drastically because consumers want SUVs, but how are like used car sedan sales as of currently, and just the comparison between the two as well as you can like put it?
So
that's an interesting segment.
Yeah.
It really is.
Are we selling more new cars? Or are we selling more used cars?
As a group, Healy Brothers always sells more new.
New cars,
You know, I'd say at the height we were probably selling 4 new to 1 used, just in our history. We've tried to make it where we sell 2 new to 1 used. That's our goal. We tend to fall just shy of that, but if we're selling 1,000 cars a month, we're selling 400 used, 600 new. We'd love to be 1-to-1. That'd be great.
That's the guide. That's the NADA guide. And the reason they do that guide is because of all the good things that used cars give you. Meaning, you know, service, you know, getting a new customer, whatever the case may be. But there's a lot of good that comes from used cars. You know, doing parts, reconditioning on that vehicle, the ability to sell, you know, finance and insurance products on that vehicle. It's very healthy to be that 1-to-1.
Also selling different brands, not just your new.
Every dealership's different. I mean, there are dealers that are very successful and all they sell is new cars. They might sell 1,000 new cars a month and 50 used cars. And there's other dealers that are great used car operations. They have a Chevy logo just to get people through the door, and all they do is sell used cars. And they're also very successful. So there's a lot of ways to be successful. There are guidelines from these outside companies, but as a group, Healy Brothers would love to be 1-to-1. We're not quite there yet. We're more like 2-to-1. But you know, as we
have
closer.
made huge strides too. Yeah, Brian's been on like the
compared to 4-to-1. But now, in terms of like the cars themselves,
I got back to the cars themselves. Now, so it's a weird trend. So a vehicle that may not be a very good selling new vehicle might end up being a top used selling vehicle. Why? Because huge incentives and lack of desirability on the new side means that the vehicle is going to have a very low resale or residual value on the used side. What does that mean? A great price car. And when someone is looking for a great priced used or certified pre-owned vehicle for a commuter, for, you know, just an extra vehicle in the household, for maybe the child to go back and forth with school, they don't care that it's the most desirable car out there. They don't care that it's not flashy. You know, one example would be, they don't make it anymore, but the Chevy Impala. Outdated design. The car had the same body style for 10 years. You know, it was not a very good seller for the Chevy stores, but it was a huge fleet vehicle, meaning rental service vehicle for the Enterprises, the Avises, and therefore there was a ton of them out there in the market, and you could get them like a third the price of what they were new. And we sold a ton of them. We would buy a ton and we'd sell a ton. And that
vehicle that comes to mind is a Nissan Rogue.
Yeah.
You know, a Nissan Rogue is an affordable SUV in the used car market. You know, they sell for very, very reasonable prices. All-wheel drive SUV in the Northeast market. Those cars go fast for us.
Yep.
Anything in that $10,000 to $20,000 range is very desirable for our used vehicle customers for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really good. It makes sense why the type of new sale is completely different than the type of car people are buying used. I mean, it totally makes sense, right? So, I mean, I think that's as good as a explanation as you can give towards that, right? So, I mean, obviously, like, manufacturers are going away from cars themselves, like producing cars, like sedans, coupes. They're just not producing as many as they used to.
Yeah, the American,
especially domestics, right? Yeah, the domestics almost got out of it. You know, Ford still has the Mustang. Chevy, we still have some Malibus on our lot.
Which neither one of us knew that was still being built.
Right. We have the Corvettes, but it's like high-end sedans.
The Corvette, I don't even count. It's a little different.
You have the high-end luxury sedans, or you have the import, you know, the commuter car, the
Elantra,
affordable.
the Forte.
Yep.
You know.
But they're not domestic, so their sales strategy is totally different. But now this makes sense with what you're saying about like trends, right? If new domestic brands aren't really offering new sedans, it's gonna increase used sedan sales within the dealer group or within just the used car market as a whole, because like there's just not new Impalas that offered anymore. There's not new Malibus offered anymore. There's not new Cruises offered anymore. Right? Chevy changed. Their new commuter cars, the Trax, right? Yeah.
Trax, Trailblazers, so smaller, compact utilities.
And that's because they did these surveys, and that they just realized that's what people wanted. If I can get gas mileage to be better than what the vehicle was as a compact sedan, and give you a bigger vehicle with all-wheel drive and still have the same, if not better, gas mileage, that's what the consumer wants. We want everything bigger. We want bigger, grander, and same price.
That's right. Same price.
Yeah. Me and Kenny literally call the Trax just the commuter crossover. Like it's its own little.
great. They move so
it's
well.
its own little type of car.
Chevy smashed that out of the park. It's a great vehicle for us.
Does a good job with that. So now on to inventory levels. Month over month change. I think you were saying it hasn't really changed.
Yeah, I mean, it'll fluctuate day to day, but as an average, we have about 400 vehicles online every day. So, on a Monday after a big weekend sale, it'll drop down to 340, 350, but by Wednesday, it'll be back up right around 400. But on the back end, the vehicles that still haven't been processed, that were either purchased or traded in within the last 24 to 48 hours, I see them on the backside. There's another 50 to 60 that we actually have available every day. Versus what's showing on the website, just because of the way that the DMS system processes them and what gets pushed online. And then we also, those are retail vehicles. On the wholesale side of things, vehicles that we're sending to auction, I'm looking and putting my eyes on every single one of those to see if we possibly made a mistake and decided that a vehicle should be sent to the auction, when really it should be offered to our customers. That everybody makes mistakes, so I look at that and I pull 5 to 10 cars a month, if not more, back that way also. So again, it's about the same. We haven't seen any crazy difference, but you will, if you're on our website, you're going to see a fluctuation from day to day.
Now here's a question: What's a car that like a rent a company recently offloaded a ton of?
You want to know? Yeah. Chevy Bolt, Tesla Model 3. I believe it was Hertz. Hertz bought a ton of them, and they increased their fleet of electric vehicles.
They bought like 100,000 Teslas or something.
Right.
It was
maybe more.
Yeah,
it might have been more. Right, but those are great vehicles for consumers, especially if they're 2 model years old. And the reason I say that is because you could get that used vehicle tax incentive that, from up to $4,000 on these cars. So
yeah, and let's touch on that.
They flooded. Right, I would love to touch on that because they've been a great segue for customers.
Because it took a lot of time and effort. Not every dealer can offer that to you as an upfront rebate. You had to submit tons of documentation to the IRS.
You know something about that, right?
Yeah, right. And
Brian did it for all the stores. Yeah.
And you had to prove that, I guess, you were reputable enough to be able to give that and front load it to the customer. We then submit the documentation to the IRS within 24 hours of the sale, make sure that everything is checked off, that the customer qualified based on the make, the model, the specific
the year,
but the specific point to the battery size is what the amount that you got on the new side. There's also income requirements. So whether you file single as a family or head of household, so we have to make sure that we're going through all those things. Then we can front load it to you instead of you having to wait until next April to get that as a tax credit on your federal taxes.
Right.
And with the negating negative equity.
Right.
Right. If you wait till April, that's not going
to help you on your auto loan. But if it's on the front end of your deal, you're purchasing the vehicle, round numbers, $35,000, and you get the $6,000 federal credit and maybe $1,000 from the state, and there's a rebate on there.
$6,000 would be on a new car.
Yes, yep. So on the used, same thing. In the
used car, it's $25,000 or less.
2 years.
2 model years or older, right? And then Brian says the battery.
The battery is only for the battery does, but there's a website for that. The battery does matter. On the used side, though, it doesn't matter that it's an American-made vehicle. The government put specific rules in there. So on the new car side, it has to be manufactured, or at least a certain percentage of the vehicle manufactured in the United States. So
50%.
Yeah.
Manufactured in the United States, and 50% of the battery components sourced and manufactured in the United States, which makes it hard.
Yeah, but they're working around it. At the auto show, one of Kia's biggest things outside of them releasing a new car was, honestly, the biggest part of their whole thing was their Georgia Gigaplant. Yeah. Right, and the whole thing, it's for EV9s. It might be for EV6s, but I know the main thing is for EV9s, and that's all about the tax credit.
But pre-owned, that doesn't matter. So all EV vehicles, plug-in hybrids, there's
plug-in hybrids and full electric vehicles.
Now, it'll be a different dollar amount dependent on if you have a 400-mile range vehicle or a 50-mile range Mitsubishi Maev or whatever those were back in the day. But yeah, it's like a golf cart. But yes, so that's huge. And again, like touching into your point, it does help with the negative equity and rolling in some of that because you're getting the vehicle for a less price.
Right. We have 2 Chevy Bolts. We're asking $18,000 for it. If you qualify your income levels, the vehicles qualify. If you, as a consumer, qualify, you could get that vehicle for $14,000. You know, that is a great, it's a great deal in this market.
Do we personally have more used EVs like Tesla Model 3s, or you said Bolts that got offloaded?
The ones that are $25,000 or less tend to sell like this. You know, it's
Right.
in a week. We do have EVs in stock right now. I think we have 6 pure electric vehicles and another 8 or 9 plug-in, like gas electric hybrid versions. Most expensive one that we have is a $68,000 Rivian that we just took in.
That in, yeah.
But you know, we had
Just took it in, I think, 2 days ago. I
Yeah,
believe.
at one point, let's say last month, we had 3 or 4 Teslas in stock.
How do they sell used in terms of length of being on?
They sell well if they're inexpensive.
Right.
So the price point really matters.
It's a really expensive. If it was $110,000 brand new and is only a year or 2 old, it depends on the desirability. It depends if Elon Musk tomorrow says, "Oh, I'm going to change the price by $14,000," and now Healy Brothers has this one that we're $14,000 wrong.
Right.
There's times, I mean, you can't control. You can only control so much. But what did we sell? The Lincoln store sold a Lucid last month.
Oh, really?
Sold in like 7 days, but it was the right price point. You know, I'd say that the EVs with long range and with the right nameplate under $30,000, they sell pretty quick.
Okay. I mean, that's good to know.
Their new counterparts are probably around 60. So hey,
It's good to know that the inventory levels are them increasing and that if they're the right price point,
interesting about
they
those
sell
used-
quickly.
Yeah. What's interesting about the used EVs is that you get calls from all over the country on your used EVs. I don't know the reason. I don't know if they're not readily available in certain parts of the country, but we get calls from Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama on our used EVs. It's very bizarre.
What's that one brand that we got in recently that they stopped making? The company went bankrupt.
Oh, the Fisker. Yeah, Fisker Ocean. Yeah.
Did we keep that, or do we send it to auction?
might have been sent to auction. We had the Fisker Ocean.
It's here.
So this is yes. So
Right.
no, we did sell that one. Yep. We had a Polestar SUV recently.
Those are new, right?
Yeah, those are new.
Polestar SUVs, right?
Right, the Polestar used to be a division in Volvo. You realize they look just like Volvo. Yeah, so they technically separated from Volvo, but they still utilize their key, they utilize their chassis, they look exactly like a Volvo. So even though they technically separate now, but they used to be a division within.
That separation was very recent too.
It was super recent because they used to be the EV and hybrid subdivision within
Right.
Volvo. Now they're on their own. But an interesting point that I'm curious on whenever we revisit this within a couple months is more brands have access to the Tesla charging network, right? Jay and I just talked about it. Not just the charging network, but I mean, new cars are going to start having the NACS plug in it, right? Hyundai's changing to it. Kia's changing to it. Chevy and Ford are changing to it. I think Kia's, not that we're going to be getting them this quarter, but the cars that they're beginning to produce in the factory this quarter, like Ioniq 5s and whatnot, and EV6s or EV9s, I forget exactly which one, they're going to have like the Tesla port, and is going to be their charging port. And all these brands have, I think Chevy and Ford's 2025s are going to start producing with that. But all these brands have access to the Tesla charging network. So when I'm there was more non-Teslas at the Tesla superchargers by my house than there were Teslas. I showed up there was a Lucid, there was a Rivian, there was a Polestar, and there was something else, and it was just me and one other Tesla, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, overnight, I'm like, more brands sign their contracts and they have access. So I'm really curious on, over time now, how it's going to affect the used car market. Because it's not just new cars that have the access to the Tesla network. Like, used cars are going to have the it doesn't matter. You can just buy the adapter and you're going to have access to it. It's not like you have to buy a new.
A quick tidbit is I never got behind the wheel of a Tesla until a couple months ago. Me and the GM of our Hyundai facility took the Tesla, it was on 10% battery, took it to the Tesla superchargers in Poughkeepsie, still Fishkill, plugged it in, walked away, got lunch. I've used the other chargers in some of the vehicles we make, and I'm very happy that Elon Musk allowed us to have access to his chargers because of the ease of use of the Tesla chargers. He's got it figured out. It's a science, so it's really good for our brands to be able to, you know, use. Right.
I think there's like 17,000 of them. Me and Jay touched on it. He built the charging network first, right? I mean, the I don't know, North sales rep or whatever from Hyundai. Who was on the interview? Bob Kim? Was that his name?
Could have been, yeah.
Right? He explained, like, he accredited Elon, not his product, but his charging network is kind of what he built first, and that was kind of a good way for him to do it. But now that he's offering it to other automakers, I think Jay was just like, I think he said it was just a good way that OEMs are getting along. Yeah. Because if they get along, it's going to help everything as a whole. It's going to help other brand sales. It's going to help the consumers. Like, it's going to help everything. So I'm really curious to see how, I guess you can say EV sales pan out over time with this access now.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see the reaction of Tesla drivers, especially if the chargers get overwhelmed. But
yeah, yeah, it is what it is. As long as you can charge, I'm sure the reaction will be too mad. But
as long as there's an open port, sure.
Yeah.
So that's really everything. I mean, like I said, we try and revisit this monthly. Maybe we'll change it to bi-monthly depending on how things change. But you wanted to mention something about our current used inventory. Was it sports cars? The type of car?
Yeah, so we're midway through October going into the end of the year, and I had noticed that we have a lot of coupes and convertible sports cars that we always tend to have towards the end of the season, but this is when, if you've been looking for something, is probably the best time to get one. We're very eager, living in the Northeast, to get rid of these. Yeah. So I did a quick search, and we've got 6 pre-owned Corvettes in stock right now. 2022, 2023, 2019, 2022, 2021, 2019. We even have a 2014 convertible. So if you're looking for a used sports car, right now is the time.
Just call us.
Yeah.
We're willing to make deals.
We have a couple Mustangs, a Challenger, a Camaro, Mazda MX-5. Is that what? No, the Mazda Miata.
Yep. 5 Miata. There's an MX-5 emblem on that. Yeah. I'll be honest, I saw a guy driving, it's like 30s in the morning now. Last couple of days, there was a guy, I wish I could remember what brand. He was on 9 in Fishkill. I'm driving out to Hyundai, and he's got his convertible top down. Like, dude, you must be
cranking the heat.
Freezing. You must be freezing. Right? I used to have a convertible, like, honestly, even on like a 60-degree day, it really wasn't that warm. You'd have to have the windows up to stop so much wind blowing on you. It really wasn't that warm, even on like a 60-degree day. So riding in like the high 30s, like low 40s was kind of like baffling to me. That's freezing. But he's trying to enjoy it because a lot of people put those cars away once there's salt. Once there's salt on the road here, they kind of stop driving them. So he's probably just trying to enjoy whatever.
He'll be driving it next week, 70-degree weather, midweek.
My grandpa's got a trike, and he rides it up until the salt is on the road. So you gotta think, till the salt's on the road, like it can be cold before it snows. Like right now it's 32 degrees when I left my house this morning.
Next week's gonna be 70.
Yep.
Hey, look, Sunday's going to be 73 degrees. Drastic difference. But what I'm saying is my grandpa will ride his trike in the 30-degree weather up until there's salt on the roads.
I'm from a different generation.
He does. He definitely does indeed. So, that's everything with the used car market. I mean, it's good insight on everything. And I'm really curious to see how stuff you touched on with EVs and other stuff pans out over time. That's really it.
We'll see.
So, cool. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, hit that subscribe button, and follow us at Healy Brothers on all social platforms.